All right, good afternoon. One of our afternoon study sessions coming up. Today we're going to focus on playing pocket pairs and the non-premium ones, which is often a problem. Finding out the opening ranges, easy thing. Finding out pre-flop three-betting ranges, easy thing. But what to call, and very often those pocket pairs are the problems. And we're going to focus on 100 pp stacks. First check, how do we do in position? Probably call with a lot of decent pocket pairs, but especially out of position. From the small blind, how do we do with those non-premium pocket pairs, which are not easy 3-bet, not easy fold. But let's start in position, and let's start from the bottom versus middle position, kind of average situation. And button is a nice position because we have position for the rest of the hand. From cutoff, we have to be worried about the button coming along. But here, let's start from pocket kings. And single suited ones. So here we see the grid. So it's pretty green. And just by looking at here, we can see that in position, we don't 3-bet single suited kings, even king, king, queen, jack, single suited. From the button versus middle position open, if we have ace, it becomes raise fold. You can 3-bet all ace, king, king. There are ace, king, king, queen suited to ace is a call. I think you can just 3-bet it. Don't worry. But what we're focusing today is whether to call or not. And we can see that if it's suited to king, then if it has two high cards, 10 or higher, you always call. And if we consider 10 as a picture card, it's not a picture card, but it has a letter. So let's say that it's a letter card. Then if you have two letter cards, suited to king, you always call. And then you call pretty much if you don't have really small one double clappers. So single clap, semi-connected. Well, to make an easy rule of thumb, if you have a single clap with the side cards, you call. Even king, king, 5-3 suited to 5-3 is a call. So basically, all the single suited kings, unless it's a really crappy one. So hands like king, king, 9-5, threshold, doesn't matter if you call, but king, king, 8-3 suited to king. When you have only two components in the hand, pocket kings and the suit, then it becomes a fold pre-flop. You're not going to hit the flop often. What about some queens? Well, now there's a big difference to the pocket kings. So with the queens, it doesn't 3-bet them that much single suited, but it calls, of course, on the double pairs. And then if the side cards are in any way connected with the queens, that's a pretty good rule of thumb. Because then we will have this green area around here, whether we play queen, queen, jack 7 or not, doesn't matter, it's in the threshold. So this bunch here, where the side cards are connected. So that's the difference with queens and kings. With kings, it's enough if the side cards are connected with each other. So they are connected or with one cap. With the queens, side cards has to connect with the queen. And this is on the button versus MP. And for jacks, it gets us tighter. Almost the same rule of thumb as with queens. Either we have high suit in it, or the side cards connect with the jack. Then jack, jack, 9-7 suited to 9-7 is not a call, but it's in the threshold. Wouldn't worry about too much. So the same principle applies. And probably when we go pocket tens, it just gets tighter and tighter. So yeah, we have when we have really connected pocket tens, jack 10, then 9, jack 10, then 8, suited to jack becomes a call, suited to 10 becomes a call, 10, then 8, 7, 10, then 9, 7. But then hands like 10, then 8, 6, double capper in a threshold. But pretty much with queens, jacks, and tens, all the four cards needs to be connected. With the kings, it's enough if the two sides cards are connected. And when we go down in pairs, the same thing applies on other pairs. So let's see how it changes if we call versus cutoff. With the kings, it's quite the same. There are some weirdo plays, but now king, king, 5 deuce, it's almost the same principle. It doesn't change much. With queens, doesn't change much. So versus middle position cutoff, these pocket pairs, now we add some queen, queen, 6, 5, but it's in the threshold, so pretty much the calling green cluster is here. So the difference is not huge. The difference is not so big that you should really worry about it. With the jack, same thing. So it doesn't really change a lot. So from the button, sorry. And let's just quickly see what happens versus cutoff. UTG. It actually almost the same. And let's see the jacks. Does it really change? It doesn't really change. So it's the same from button versus any open. With kings, queens, jacks, tens. Pretty much easy rule of thumb. With kings, single suited, it's enough if the side cards are connected. With everything else, all the four cards should be somewhat connected. Then let's do from the small blind. And let's start versus button open. Now, this is single suited kings. Now it changes a lot. There's only one green box. Pretty much we can just dismiss that. We don't call with single suited kings. What Solver wants to do, it wants to 3-bet all the single suited kings. And now this green blue area is almost like the green area in the previous one. Pocket kings with connected side cards, or both cards, or two cards are letter cards. Kings and the 10. So pretty much the same range as from the button. It doesn't change that dramatically. There are some differences here and there, but now it wants to 3, but it doesn't call with kings. So if you want the rule of thumb, don't call with single suited kings from the small blind versus button open. Let's see, does it matter if it's middle position open? Well, you can see that it's way different. So there's a huge difference whether the open comes from middle position or from the button, because when middle position open and it gets folded to you on the small blind, you pretty much play only double paired kings, ace king kings, and then really connected king king queen jack, king king jack 10 type of hands. And most of them are raise and fold to a 4-bet. Although I don't think I would ever fold king king 8 8 to a 4-bet. Not sure if the math is actually right there. We could actually see it, because now that kind of buggers me and I started to question myself. So let's see. There's an open V3 bet and button 4 bets, and small blind range is pocket aces, and we have king, king, 8, 8. And the EV of calling the flop, because in reality after 4-bet, the pocket ace is stack off on any flop. And here we see that the EV is plus 1.7 BBs if we play perfectly post flop. Well, due to range, it becomes minus EV actually. So it's a really tight fold. In reality, I don't think I would ever or could fold that. You just get it in. Not get it in, call the flop, and then see what happens. But yeah, I wouldn't mind a fold. It's very close if we're 100 pips deep. What about versus middle position? Same thing with queens. So a really good rule of thumb versus UTG on middle position open. Early position opens is that we don't really want to call with pocket pairs, or we don't want to play pocket pairs from the small blind. We play the premium ones and we raise them. So what happens when the open is from the cutoff? Well, almost like versus a button. So here is versus cutoff, and let's compare that versus button. So versus button, we 3-bet almost twice as much pocket kings. Versus cutoff, it's a bit tighter. It's premium ones, good ones. So often we categorize UTG and middle position opens as early position, and then cutoff and button as a late position. But there's a difference between cutoff and this is versus cutoff with the queens very tight, and with the jacks it should get way tighter. Suited ace becomes a raise, but connected double pairs, and with pocket tens, pretty tight. Connected to two pairs, single suited and suited ace, and that's about it. So that's how we go with pocket pairs. From the button, from the small blind, from the big blind, we probably can call with a lot of pocket pairs. Even versus middle position open. Because we know, with kings, everything is green. Probably when we pocket tens, we still call quite a lot, all the decent ones. So what about if we are on the cutoff and we face, let's say, a middle position open? Now there's the button behind, and you can see that the range is a lot tighter than what it would be from the button. And what we can see here is pretty much all ace king kings. We play 3-bet most of them, all double paired hands, that's no brainer, and then all the connected ones. If it's suited the king, all the connecting side cards, and then with the cap if they play somehow with the kings. And what about the queens? Now it gets really tight. So now we need to start to memorize, to have some kind of idea, because I don't think you can just memorize everything from the matrix, because there are so many different situations and hands. But you don't have to be perfect. What you need to do is to have some kind of rule of thumbs, some kind of helping guidelines. What should we have here? And these are the single-suited ones. Now the next question is, are there any situations when we would fold Broadway double-suited hand? And let's say small blind versus button, what do we do with the double-suited jacks? That was a question that yesterday I was playing, and button opened, and I have a double-suited jack. It was jack 10-4 or 7-4, and I wasn't really sure what to do. I thought that, should I 3-bet or should I call? And here we can see that double-suited jack 7-4 would be a fold. From the small blind versus button, which sounds a bit weird, we raise all the connected ones. We play pretty much all the Broadway jacks with the Broadway card. But yeah, jack 10-4, jack 7-4 would be a fold from the small blind, which is something that I probably don't do often enough. Even double-suited tens, it needs to be connected. But yeah, with the double-suited jacks, you can see that there are no green ones. So no calling from the small blind. What if the open comes from the cutoff? Do we then start to call? No. Looks like from the small blind we don't really want to call with pocket pairs. Okay, versus middle position open, now there's some calls with double-suited jacks, but still most of them are raised. One last situation. UTG opens and we are in the middle position. And often that's a spot where we think that, okay, we can call with kings because it's going to create domino effect and it's going to be a multi-way pot. And pocket kings has good playability in multi-way pots. But not sure how solver thinks, because there might be a squeeze. So single suited kings, you can see that it's really tight. UTG open solver once, it doesn't call with king, king, queen, 9 single suited. It folds. And I think one reason is that when we call and we get squeezed, we are in a bad shape, and UTG's range should be quite top heavy too. But I don't think I could fold king, king, queen, 9, king, king, jack 8. Those are thresholds. King, king, 9, 6 single suited, okay. So all the double pairs, all the ace, king, queens, all the really connected pocket kings, even single suited, is a call from middle position. That's a somewhat surprising. I know it's right to play tight, but that's a bit too tight. I would guess that it would be wider. With queens, you can see that, yeah, double pairs, ace, queen, queens, and then only the premium ones. There's only jack 10 and 10-9 suited to queen or jack. So that's really tight calling range or playing range. So when UTG opens from middle position, you fold a lot of your pocket pairs. And from cutoff, you play them all the decent, all the good ones. And from the button, you can call with a lot of kings and then semi-connected queens, jacks, tens, and so on. All right. And let's just see how does it change if we play deeper. And let's see cutoff versus middle position first. This is 500, but the same things apply. We can just see the pattern. We can see that with the kings, doesn't change dramatically. And then there's a race with the queens. All right. What about button versus cutoff? Yeah. Now there comes a bit more raising. 100 pips deep, we called with a lot of kings. Now this middle cluster here becomes a raise fold. And what you can see that when we get deeper, then in position we three bet pretty much all the double paired hands with the Broadway pair. That's interesting. And from the small blind, does it change? Okay, now what happens when we get deeper? We still three bet most of the kings, single suited, but then we start to call with the more marginal ones. And even with the queens, now that becomes calls. 100 pips deep, we don't call with pocket pairs from the small blind as a rule of thumb. We either three bet or fold. But when we get deeper, then we start to call a bit more, still raising a lot of the hands. Yeah, same pattern. Three bet most, but start to call a bit more. And what about 500? Yeah, it was cutoff versus middle position. So when we were playing 100 pips deep, now middle position here is the UTG. This is 500. This is the first position. 100 pips deep. When the first position opens, we didn't want to call with a lot of kings. But when we get deeper, the position is more powerful. Now there is a decent amount of green ones. We start to call with all the single suited kings with connected side cards. And when all the four cards are connected, it becomes a raise fold. So that makes sense. All right. One thing I want to see is when we are on the small blind and there's, let's say, middle position opens and button calls, then here's the small blind. Remember that versus one open, from the small blind, we don't call with kings. But when there's domino effect, someone opens, button calls, now we start to call with most of the kings. We three bet double paired, king, queen, 4. Wow. My initial thought, if there's a middle position open and cutoff for button calls, then I would call with king, queen, 4. Nice multi-way pot. And then we hit the set, we get a lot of value. Just when we three bet one opponent with double paired hands, the beauty is that then on any ace high board, we can represent ace. And we have huge fold equity on those. But when there's two opponents, we don't have them. Of course, pocket kings is a pretty strong overpair anyway, so. So the ones to do three bet all double paired Broadway. Hands out of position, especially deep. That's pretty weird. All right. But if you have problems playing pocket pairs pre-flop, then I hope this clarified. Senior suited kings from the button we call pretty much everything except the real crappy ones, and with everything else senior suited pocket pairs we call if it's connected. Four cards are connected in some way. And we 3-bet ace, queen, queen suited to ace. We 3-bet some double paired senior suited. And then from the small blind, good rule of thumb is 100 pips deep. We don't want to call with pocket pairs. If we want to play the pocket pair, we 3-bet it. And it's a bit simplified, but in my opinion, it's accurate enough. We don't have to be perfect. Near the thresholds, it doesn't matter what we choose. Steve is very close. So you can have these shortcuts, make things simplified, and make it way more manageable to play. All right, thanks. This was a really short study session. Would be nice to play a little. Too bad I don't have time now. Might be that I host a live stream with PLO action around the midnight once again, and then we will see how to play those pocket pairs. But hope you enjoyed. And if you're watching this on the YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. Help us with the good cause. Thank you and bye bye.